We're getting to a point where we get access to the hardware in the form that we want and need, and now that's where the software comes in, to be able to deploy that hardware in an efficient way into our entire network, Einride CEO Rusby Charlie told Reuters. That statement reveals what makes this deal much bigger than simply adding another customer to Tesla's Semi program. Einride has announced an order for approximately 500 Tesla Semis, taking its electric truck fleet from roughly 250 vehicles to around 750. The first trucks are expected to arrive next month, with the remainder delivered in stages over the following 24 months. That makes this the largest publicly announced Tesla Semi order to date, surpassing WattEV's previous record of 370 trucks. Tesla itself is clearly treating the deal differently from a routine fleet purchase. Einride is at the forefront of sustainable freight, and we are thrilled to deepen our relationship with them through this order of 500 semis, said Dan Priestley, Tesla's director of Semi. The wording matters. Tesla is not simply celebrating another sale, it is describing the order as a deepening relationship, suggesting that Einride has become an important commercial partner as Tesla moves the Semi beyond limited deployments. But the real surprise is where these trucks will operate. The 500 Semis will be deployed across California, Texas, New Jersey, Illinois, and Georgia. That transforms the order into something much closer to a nationwide commercial test. Tesla will have to demonstrate that hundreds of electric Class 8 trucks can operate across different freight corridors, climates, traffic conditions, and charging environments, not just on a carefully selected pilot route. There is also a critical software layer. Amazon is the customer, while Einride will manage the vehicles through its Saga platform for routing and charging. In other words, the test is no longer just about whether Tesla can build an electric truck with enough range. It is about whether the truck, charging network, and software can work together at scale. The financial structure makes the story even more interesting. Einride ended June with approximately 748 million Swedish kronor, or about $77 million in cash, while 500 Tesla Semis at current quoted prices could represent roughly $130 million to $145 million in hardware. Einride says the deployment is fully financed through third-party financing, meaning the company does not need to pay the entire hardware bill from its own cash. So the real significance of this order is not simply that Tesla sold 500 trucks. Tesla now has one of its largest opportunities yet to prove that the Semi can function as a scalable commercial freight platform, and Einride may be the customer that finally puts that claim to a serious test. Tesla's latest Semi update reveals something far more important than a 500-mile range figure. The economics are starting to look fundamentally different from a diesel Class 8 truck. Tesla's own numbers put Semi consumption at roughly 1.7 kilowatt-hours per mile, while the comparison provided for a heavy-duty diesel truck comes to about 67 cents per mile in fuel cost. At an estimated 20 cents per mile for electricity, that creates a gap of approximately 47 cents per mile. On a truck covering 100,000 miles every year, that translates into roughly $47,000 in energy savings per truck per year. That is the number fleet operators are ultimately going to care about, not how futuristic the Semi looks. Now scale that calculation to Einride's reported 500 truck order. If every truck covers 100,000 miles annually, the fleet would travel approximately 50 million miles per year. At a 47 cent per mile energy advantage, the theoretical difference becomes $23.5 million every year in energy costs alone. Over 10 years, that reaches approximately $235 million before even accounting for maintenance. This is why the headline price of the Semi needs to be viewed differently. A truck costing roughly $260,000 to $290,000 sounds expensive when compared with a conventional diesel truck, but the purchase price is only one part of the economics. The real question is how much it costs to keep that truck moving for hundreds of thousands of miles. Tesla is also highlighting another advantage: fewer parts requiring maintenance. A diesel truck carries an internal combustion engine, transmission, exhaust after-treatment equipment, and numerous components associated with maintaining a combustion powertrain. Semi's electric architecture removes much of that mechanical complexity. Even a relatively small maintenance advantage becomes substantial when multiplied by 100,000 miles per year. And this is where the often cited $400,000 plus potential savings over 10 years becomes interesting. That figure should not be treated as a guaranteed result because electricity prices, diesel prices, charging demand charges, maintenance schedules, and operating conditions can dramatically change the outcome. But the underlying calculation shows why Tesla can justify a much higher upfront price if the truck consistently costs less to operate. Then there is the 1.2 megawatt megacharger. This number matters because operating economics mean nothing if the truck spends too much time sitting still. Tesla says the system can restore roughly 60% of the semi's range in 30 minutes. Using the advertised 500-mile maximum range as a simple reference, 60% represents approximately 300 miles of additional range. That means the charging stop itself could potentially cover a substantial portion of another freight leg rather than becoming a major interruption to the workday. For a commercial fleet, that is critical because time is an operating cost. Every hour a truck is unavailable is an hour in which the asset is not generating revenue. The 500-mile range also becomes more meaningful when combined with that charging speed. Tesla is not simply selling long range, it is trying to create a truck that can fit charging into the rhythm of commercial transportation. And the new fleet management capabilities make the equation even more interesting. Real-time vehicle status, trip planning, remote support, and OTA updates mean the Semi is being positioned as part of a connected fleet rather than an isolated vehicle. Einride can potentially coordinate where trucks go, when they charge, and how they are deployed across its network. But the biggest number may actually be 50 million miles. If 500 semis each travel 100,000 miles per year, that is the amount of freight movement this single deployment could represent annually. At 47 cents of energy savings per mile, the theoretical economic difference is $23.5 million per year. That transforms Einride's order from a headline about 500 trucks into a real-world test of whether Tesla's promised operating economics can survive at commercial scale. And that is ultimately what makes these new Semi figures so important. Tesla is no longer asking customers to judge the Semi only by its range or acceleration. The real product is the cost of moving 1 mile of freight, and if Tesla can consistently make that mile dramatically cheaper, the $260,000 to $290,000 purchase price starts to look much less important. For Tesla, the most important part of this 500-truck deal may not be the order itself. It may be what happens when Tesla starts scaling production around it. The Semi factory next to Gigafactory Nevada was designed for a potential production capacity of 50,000 trucks per year, and Tesla began ramping production in April. Analysts had previously estimated that Tesla could deliver somewhere between 5,000 and 15,000 semis during 2026, although those estimates already looked aggressive at the time. The important distinction is that Tesla is not building a factory around a few hundred trucks. It is building the infrastructure to eventually produce tens of thousands of electric Class 8 trucks every year. Put that into perspective. A 500-truck Einride order sounds enormous today because it is the largest publicly announced Tesla Semi order so far. But against a potential annual capacity of 50,000 trucks, those 500 vehicles represent only about 1% of the factory's theoretical yearly output. That changes the way we should look at this deal. Tesla isn't simply trying to fulfill Einride's order. It is trying to create a production system capable of turning orders like this into something routine. If Tesla eventually reaches 50,000 units per year, it would need to average roughly 4,167 trucks per month. At that scale, a 500-truck fleet order would no longer be extraordinary. It could become a relatively small commercial deployment. But production is only one side of the equation. The more interesting challenge is charging. Einride's 500 semis will operate across California, Texas, New Jersey, Illinois, and Georgia, and the deployment is expected to involve recurring freight routes. That is extremely important for Tesla because predictable truck routes make high-power charging infrastructure much easier to justify economically. A megacharger installed along a route used repeatedly by hundreds of trucks has a completely different business case from a charger built for an uncertain pilot program. Tesla can potentially know where the trucks operate, how many miles they travel, when they return, and when they need to recharge. That allows charging capacity to be designed around actual fleet demand rather than speculation. And with Tesla advertising megacharging at up to 1.2 megawatts, the infrastructure becomes a critical part of the Semi's economics. One truck charging at 1.2 megawatts is already a substantial electrical load. 10 trucks could theoretically require 12 megawatts of instantaneous charging capacity, while 50 trucks could reach 60 megawatts. The challenge, therefore, isn't simply building more trucks. Tesla has to build an energy system capable of keeping those trucks productive. And this is where Einride becomes particularly interesting. Einride has built its reputation around software, fleet management, and autonomous freight technology. Its philosophy is essentially that the intelligence layer can sit above hardware supplied by different manufacturers. Tesla, meanwhile, is developing the hardware, electric powertrain, charging ecosystem, and autonomous driving technology. Those two strategies could eventually converge. Tesla has already positioned the Semi as a vehicle designed with autonomy in mind, and Elon Musk has said autonomous semi-operation is expected on roughly a 1-year horizon. If that timeline materializes, the significance of the Einride deployment could become much larger than today's 500 truck order. These vehicles could potentially evolve from conventional electric trucks into connected, software-managed, and eventually autonomous freight assets. That creates a very different picture of what Tesla is actually building. The company isn't simply producing an electric truck with a 500-mile range, it is attempting to connect 4 layers of technology: high-volume truck manufacturing, ultra-high-power charging, fleet software, and autonomy. Each layer makes the others more valuable. More trucks create more demand for charging. More predictable routes make charging infrastructure more efficient. More connected trucks generate more operational data. And more data can potentially improve autonomous systems. The speed of this transition will ultimately determine whether Tesla Semi becomes a niche electric truck or something much larger. If Tesla can move from thousands of vehicles toward tens of thousands annually while simultaneously expanding megacharger infrastructure, the economics discussed earlier become much more powerful. Lower production costs can reduce the truck's purchase price. More charging infrastructure can reduce downtime. Better software can increase utilization. And autonomy could eventually reduce one of the largest costs in freight transportation: human labor. That is why the 500-truck Einride deal may be more important as a starting point than as a record. Today, Tesla is proving that it can sell hundreds of semis to a commercial fleet. Tomorrow, the real question is whether Tesla can build thousands quickly enough, charge them efficiently enough, and eventually automate them enough to transform the economics of freight itself. The Semi may start as a $290,000 electric truck, but Tesla's bigger ambition appears to be turning it into a scalable transportation platform, one where the truck, factory, charging network, software, and autonomous driving system all become part of the same machine.